All right, everyone, I'm going live. It is noon, and I am going live. I'm using some new technology, so I am hoping that it works correctly. But if for some reason it's not working correctly, I might have to change things up a little bit here. But I am going live, and this is my weekly webcast. This is the third time I'm doing it, and I feel like each time I do it, I get a little bit better. So the first time I did my weekly webcast, I had my microphone backwards. So somebody told me about that. And then the next time I did it, I upgraded to a microphone that somebody gave to me, like a donation, which is good. But then I realized that I had that microphone upside down. Apparently with this stand, it's supposed to hang. So I think I've got the technology correctly assembled now. Hello, Amanda Conrath. You're the first one to say hello. So I want to say hi back. If for some reason you can't hear me, just let me know. And if you can't see me, let me know. But a few weeks ago, I decided to go live on Thursdays. And here's the reason. Because I am struggling to do three things well. To think clearly, to care deeply, and to respond biblically to everything that's going on with the coronavirus situation. There are a lot of people out there I know who are trying to do those three things also. And I feel like we have to work together because we can so quickly get discouraged or overwhelmed. And then we're tempted to either withdraw, which is unhealthy, or to freak out, which is unhealthy as well and not good for us or our families. And so if, like me, you're trying to not get overwhelmed, you're trying to not freak out, I think, again, the answer is we've got to think clearly, we've got to care deeply, and we've got to respond biblically. And so that's the purpose of why this webcast is even happening. A preview of what we're going to talk about today. The next 2 weeks are going to be huge. The next 2 weeks represent the first crest of the first wave of the coronavirus hitting us, hitting our country, and our world is responding too. So the next 2 weeks are going to be the crest of that first wave. And so there's a lot of gravity. We're going to cover some of the quotes and some of the stats from this week that were released. And we're also going to look at how people are getting nutty. I don't know about you, but people are getting nutty. When you add all this stress and pressure to a society, some people aren't responding too well. People are going a little crazy. And then I actually, if the technology cooperates, I have the ability to show some pictures and some videos while I'm doing this. Again, that's assuming that all of this works together. So that's what's coming today. We're gonna have some photos of the week. Let's start by talking about how people are kind of freaking out. I have felt like I'm waking up to a new reality. You probably feel that too, like we're in a different world, right? We're in a different world. And then I read something that was pretty funny. Here's the article from NPR. Stephen King is sorry you feel like you're stuck in a Stephen King novel. So Stephen King released a statement that he's sorry that we all feel like we're in one of his books. In his 1978 novel, The Stand, author Stephen King wrote about a viral pandemic that decimated the world's population. And he gets it when fans say experiencing the COVID-19 outbreak feels like stepping into one of his horror stories. Quote, I keep having people say, gee, it's like we're living in a Stephen King story, he says, and my only response to that is, I'm sorry. So, things are bad, things are serious when Stephen King is saying he's sorry because it feels like we are in one of his books. That caught my attention. And I think some people are wondering, well, is it really like, are we living in a Stephen King book? So I dug up this clip. Hopefully it works. But in New York, people reported that someone was using a drone to police to warn people about following the social guideline restrictions. So check it out. Here is that footage.
The anti-COVID-19 volunteer drone task force. Please maintain a social distance of at least 6 feet. Again, please maintain social distancing. Please help stop the spread of this virus, reduce the death toll, and save lives. For your own safety and your family's safety, please maintain social distancing. Thank you for your cooperation. We are all in this together.
The police said they don't know who did that, but this is a volunteer drone task force. The police said, yeah, there's no such thing as that. So somebody just took it upon themselves to send out their drone and to help both encourage and police the citizens as they maintain social distancing. So there are drones in the sky that are warning people about social distancing. So thanks for everybody who's jumped on. Sharon Parney, good to see you. Pastor Mark and Phil Cummings, welcome. Glad that you're here. Hey, like and share it if you think other people could benefit from this. So the gravity each week seems to change. We are all asking ourselves, is this for real? Is this for real? It was hard to believe it was for real when there were like 40 cases, in the US. It was hard to believe that. But now we know that it is for real. The first wave of corona is showing just how powerful of a force the coronavirus truly is. The week began with the president saying there is going to be a lot of death over the next 2 weeks, a lot of death. That's a big statement from the president to say, in summary, the next 2 weeks, in a nutshell, a lot of death, a lot of death. The Surgeon General also did an interview, and he said these next 2 weeks will be our Pearl Harbor, our 9/11. So when you reach for such strong, sobering language, I think that it creates a reaction, right? My reaction is like, wow, those are like as big of a warning flag as you could like put up there. So is this for real? Is this for real? And as the numbers have come in, yes, it is for real. We know that. But I have to admit that as the numbers started coming in, I've experienced, and maybe you've experienced this too, I've experienced number overload. So with these stats that are coming out, I kind of have lost track of hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, millions. With all of these numbers, there's just like this fog, like this swirling group of numbers. And I feel like I didn't really comprehend what the numbers meant. So I did a lot of work to just dig down and to find some key statistics. And so let me put a slide up here. Hopefully this works too. Here's some key stats that I found that help me to understand when it comes to death, what the coronavirus is capable of and what is actually happening. So according to the CDC website, Centers for Disease Control, in 2017, about 7,708 people died each day in the U.S. of all causes. The number one cause of death in the U.S. is heart disease. So about 1,773 people die each day of heart disease. That's number one. Number one. So on April 7th, 2 days ago, 1,970 people died of COVID-19 in the U.S., which made it officially the number one cause of death on average on a daily basis. So number one. In New York, which is the epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak, about 425 people die each day of all causes in the state. So when over 700 people are dying each day of just COVID-19 in New York, they're approaching twice as many deaths from corona in New York as there are all other causes. So we get a glimpse in New York of what an epicenter outbreak could look like in any city, Chicago, LA. And we also get a nationwide picture of what it means when something very rapidly blitzes past all other causes of death and becomes the number one cause of death. Now, this isn't a total yet. This isn't like in 2020, the coronavirus is the number one cause of death. So what it's saying is on a daily basis, the coronavirus has gotten to the point where on a daily basis, it is the number one cause of death in the country. And in a state like New York, it is by far close to doubling the number of deaths compared to all other causes. Now, this is what I would say, I would call these sobering numbers. Because we have thrown everything at this virus in the kitchen sink. We have done what we have never done before in the country. And still, coronavirus is showing its power. One of the reasons why these numbers are happening is because there is a lag. There is perhaps even a month-long lag between when someone first gets infected and perhaps they die from the disease. So this doesn't prove that our efforts are futile. This doesn't prove that nothing's working. This just shows you the power of the first wave of the coronavirus to come and to just knock us down. And I think it validates that a lot of our efforts are, first of all, right, and second of all, working. Here's another slide. These would be some helpful comparisons. So I've been hearing in the media a lot of comparisons between disease and war. I don't think that comparison shows us anything specifically about corona, because you could frankly compare heart disease or the flu to war. And so I want to be careful. The comparison is this, that disease in general is much more fatal than war. So war versus disease. If 405,000 soldiers died in World War II, American soldiers, over 1,341 days of battle, that means on average about 302 U.S. soldiers died per day of combat in World War II. Now, yeah, war kills lots of people. But just by comparison, over 700 people per day are dying of COVID-19 in New York. What that illustrates is just the power of disease to kill at a level that is so much greater, over twice the daily average of a world war. So compared to war, we see the destructive power of disease and of COVID-19 in particular. Another helpful comparison, and I'm sharing a comparison with the flu because it seems like at the beginning, a lot of people, including the president, were finding this refuge. This looks bad, but I mean, compared to the flu, the flu, and people that's kind of their go-to get out of panic free card. But when you look at the stats now, there is no comparison between the flu and the coronavirus, like none. So the normal flu killed 61,000 people in 2017 to 18, and that was the peak. That's like, wow, that was the big one, 61,000. The normal flu ranges from 12,000 to 61,000 annual deaths over the last 10 years. 12,000 is a good year, 61,000 is a bad year. So let's look at the estimates for COVID-19. The estimate on the low end is that it'll kill 90,000 Americans. High end, 200,000. This is with stopping the whole world. This is with pausing the whole economy. This is with telling everyone to go home. Best case scenario, the low end, 90,000 to 200,000 Americans. If we did nothing, the estimates were 1 to 2 million people would have died. So that little refuge is just, we know now by the facts that, of the death rate, it's become number one. There's really no comparison. So these stats have been really helpful to me, very sobering and very helpful to me. And I've got a video here too that shows the pace at which the coronavirus became number one. So what you're looking at here is the top 15 causes of death in the United States. And what they've done is each one of those blue bars represents, on average, how many people die each day in the U.S. from those causes. So you got heart disease at the top, cancer's number 2. So it's like 1,700 people a day, on average, die of heart disease. So they just froze those numbers as if they were actual. And then you'll see the number March 15th is at the bottom. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play it, and it will show you from March 15th on, corona, which was number 0 at one point. Nobody died of corona, right? And then you see each day how corona becomes more and more of a cause of death. So check this out. March 19th, 20th, nothing. 21st, whoop, there's corona. Each day, on average, killing more people in the U.S. April's coming soon. March 30th, 31st, April 1st, April 2nd, April 3rd, April 4th, April 5th, 6th, it's number 2, it's number 1. April 7th, number 1. So about 1,970 deaths from corona on April 7th became number 1. And it did it quickly. what they've been warning us from the beginning is the curve is going to go straight up if we don't dogpile on top of it, and we have to bend the curve. So hopefully those were helpful. Getting back to the live video here. Did I do it? I think I did it. Okay. So those are some key stats. Those are some helpful comparisons, and that's how rapidly it became number one. So is it a hoax? Is it a conspiracy? No, it isn't. If anything, the numbers that are reported are lower than the actuals. So in New York, the chair of the committee of, I forget the exact name, but the chair of the health department committee in New York City said there's about 180 to 200 deaths a day. We aren't including in our totals because we didn't get a chance to swab them and test them before they died, but we're pretty confident that it was corona. So add another to 700, add another 200 on top of that. So the number is no conspiracy. This isn't just the press trying to get the president. This is actually a real thing. So all of that is meant to help us think clearly, not to freak out. I think knowing the actual stats helps me to think clearly. So what is happening in the United States? What is happening in the United States? In Illinois. What's happening in Illinois? So in Illinois, we haven't peaked yet. We haven't crested yet. Governor Pritzker extended the stay-at-home order, the shelter-in-place order. It was supposed to end this week on Tuesday, I think, and he extended it through April. So kids are home a lot longer than parents thought, which is creating stress and opportunity in the home. So we're realizing that it takes a while for corona to crest. In Illinois, there's a total of 2,709 ICU beds, 2,709, and 949 of them are open. So there's only 35% of the ICU beds still available. So they're converting McCormick Place into I don't know if it was 1,000 or 2,000 bed hospital. They're getting ready for more patients coming. Regular hospital beds available, they're about 60% full. So what can Corona do? How much power does it have? Well, 60% of the hospital beds are full, and close to 70% approaching of the ICU beds are full, and we're not even at peak yet. There's a lot of talk about ventilators. Why are ventilators so important? The estimates are, we still don't know a lot about the coronavirus, but the estimate is between 50 and 80% of people who get put on the ventilators won't survive. So there's a lot of things that go into that number, and they're still figuring it out. But the bottom line is, if the chances are 50-50, at best, if you get on a ventilator, well, what if there is no ventilator? So that's why they have to get the ventilators in place to care for the people. All right, so all of this summarizes the coronavirus, the first wave coming, and hopefully that gives you a handle on where we're at. More people have jumped on. Hello, Cynthia Gillis. Hello, Pat O'Connell, Brian Ridgick. Wow, a lot of people are hopping on board. Welcome to everybody. One exercise that somebody asked me to do this week that I think helped me was somebody who's mentoring me and a bunch of other pastors said, hey, pick 3 words that describe how you are responding to the coronavirus situation. So maybe that's something that you can throw in the comments right now. What's 1 or 2 or 3 words that would summarize how you're responding? I think my 3 words were disoriented. I just feel like, so like a year or 2 ago, do you remember when Jewel moved everything in the grocery store? How many of you remember that? They moved everything. And I went to the grocery store, and there was a woman who said, I've worked here for 15 years and I don't know where anything is. So going to the grocery store with a shopping list when they moved everything kind of feels like I'm just so disoriented. I'm like, where does everything in life go? How does shopping work? How does school work? It's like people moved everything around. And it's not that we're doing things that are disorienting. We're just doing normal things in a very disorienting way. Where's my gloves? Where's my mask? So disoriented is a big one. Distracted is another one. I feel so distracted by the truth, by the facts, and then distracted by the desire to sometimes just unplug and just be like, I got to turn this off. But then third, I think determined to help, determined to not hurt other people, I feel determined to figure out the best strategy and rhythm and to help other people. So I think those would be the 3 words that What about you? How have you responded? Madeline Donovan, bored. Bored. You need to get Netflix, Madeline. That would be one thing that will help. So throw down in the comments the 1 or 2 or 3 words. How are you responding to the coronavirus situation? Okay, so that was my effort. Hopefully you don't feel overwhelmed by the stats. That was my effort to help us think clearly. Let's talk about caring deeply. Caring deeply. I've wanted to keep our eyes on the nations. I have wanted to help us to know what's going on outside of our 4 walls of our country. And I think that that's really good for the heart. So one new feature today is I have photos of the week. I'm going to show a slideshow here. I hope all this is working. If none of this is working, you guys have to let me know. This is the first time I've done this. But here's a slideshow that I think captures, obviously a picture's worth 1,000 words. So here's some pictures that just show how the coronavirus has changed our world. That's the Bean, and every time you've been there, there's been thousands of people, but nobody's there. And the Buckingham Fountain, just empty. Art Institute. There's entire videos of drone footage of big cities that look like ghost towns. This is a Costco in California, and people are in line just to get the basics. This isn't even, it's not like a new Apple iPhone is coming out. This is for toilet paper. So this is one picture that shows how life has changed. This is a teenager who I think got all dressed up like this because he was afraid of infecting his grandparents. And there just so happens to be somebody there holding a "You Need Jesus" sign. It's awesome. That's always awesome. And this next picture is volunteers flying on a Southwest flight to help in New York. So that's kind of the good part. The governor issued a call and many responded. This next picture really just, it hit me hard. They don't have morgue space in New York. They have portable refrigerated trucks. And so they are doing the best they can to keep up with the need when people do pass away. But that is not something you see in the United States every day. Here's a picture of a minister in Italy who can't have his congregation there, so he set up pictures of all of them so that when he does his service, he can have them in mind. That's a really great idea. This is in Kampala, Uganda, and the police were trying to get everybody to go home. And so early on, it took some force to get that to happen. We've got some friends in Uganda too, so I just want them to know that you're on our hearts and you're in our minds. And this, I forget what airport this was. It was Germany or the UK or whatever. But this is a board in an international airport showing flight departures. So again, this is one picture that shows how the world has changed. The Olympics have been canceled, postponed for a year, and they are preserving the flame so that they can relight it next year. Allison Felix, a sprinter and 6-time Olympic gold medalist, said she was disappointed after the 2020 Olympics were postponed, but here's what she said. She said, "We are not owed our dreams. We are not owed our dreams." So athletes are processing that. This is a good picture. This is a picture of healthcare workers at a nursing home in Spain after their first day of no new cases. And their first day, they're having a dance party outside. They're so excited, and those days will come here. And then we're back to the Bean. So hopefully those pictures give you a window into the world right now and how things have changed. Hello, Amanda Conrath. Victoria, welcome. Brian Ridgick. David Lee. Tia. All right. Keep sharing how this has been making you feel. So when it comes to caring deeply, I think we're all trying to be grateful, thankful to those who are on the front line of all of this, the healthcare workers, those who are suffering. So I have a pastor who I've known for a long time down the street. He tested positive a week or two ago and got admitted to the hospital, got put on a ventilator, and they said, pray, just pray. He's already kind of advanced in having the disease, so a lot of us prayed at his church, at our church, and earlier this week, they just took him off the ventilator. They said, hey, he's fighting for his life. So we've got a heavy heart for him, for his family, and for his church. In our church, we have 7 people who either tested positive or who were highly symptomatic, but they were told they can't get a test, but they were told to go home and act as if they have it, which means they have it. So we have 7 people in our church, and so it's been a heavy burden just as a pastor to care for people and to just hop on the phone. One woman was bringing her mom to the ER at 90 years old, and she said, yep, I got to admit her and then leave and go home. And she's like, I probably have it, but I can't get a test. They won't test me. They won't test my brother. So there's a lot of frustration and anxiety with people who are on the front lines. And the healthcare workers are just true heroes. They're going into battle every day. And in the U.S., we have a lot of respect and love for the people who are doing their job. I've got a few people in my life who are doctors or nurses. I'm just texting them and trying to encourage them and say, hey, love you guys. Thank you so much. But in the nations as well, I really am just concerned for those who are treating this disease all around the world. So I saw in Time Magazine a little blurb that said, protect healthcare workers. Ebola killed nearly 1 out of 10 of Liberia's healthcare workers. Wow, 1 out of 10. That shows the power of a disease to impact healthcare workers around the world. And the Brazil's health minister said, by the end of April, our healthcare system will collapse. So the world is going through this together. And in the U.S., we've got a lot of ammunition to fight this fight. In other places, they're not as prepared. So I just have a heavy heart for all of them. I do want to care deeply. My wife said something interesting. She said, it seems like Corona is bringing out the best and the worst in people at the same time. And I know that's true. I think as a pastor, when people get angry, when they get upset, they're usually hurt or afraid. So I try and process it through that lens. But a lot of people are just getting rude, snippy. They're anxious, and it's probably because they're worried about their job, they're worried about their family, they're worried about their friends. But it has been hard. It has put a lot of stress on people. I think that one thing that I care about also is there are peripheral challenges, especially with healthcare because of the coronavirus. So like if you have corona, you've got a big problem. But if you have anything else, you've got a big problem too, because doctors aren't seeing patients. Hospitals aren't admitting patients. So I heard a few things this week that just opened my eyes and formed my heart toward people who have other things that are going on. So the Lawndale Health Clinic, we have some people at our church who work there. The system now is if you have to go to the emergency room there at the hospital, you drive up. You don't get out of your car. You pull up and a doctor and a nurse or somebody comes to the window and you tell them what's happening and then they decide if you park or not. And so it's like drive-through health for most people. And you have to have a convincing story to get admitted to the hospital. That's new. And then another friend of mine this week developed a pretty serious medical condition. It was something with his skin that threatened to get into his eye. So it was a medical emergency. And so he spent all day, Thursday or Friday, trying to get telehealth, just waiting in line online. And then finally got through and they told him, well, you got to go to the emergency room. Right? So then he went to the emergency room. They stopped him at the door. Stop, security guard, stop. Do not take a step into the emergency room. Tell me your symptoms. So he's got to tell him his symptoms and then, all right, fine, you can come in and fill out the paperwork. And well, then they sent him home. They couldn't do what he needed. So then he was supposed to call an eye doctor. Well, it took a few days for that eye doctor to call back because there's no office hours right now. So, Thursday, Friday, all the way to Tuesday before he gets pretty serious emergency care. So I think that's probably why parents are all telling their children, do not do anything that's going to send you to the hospital. This is the worst. I can't Google setting a broken arm, right? So just stay away from each other. But I think that we have to care. We have to have a heart for people who are struggling with the disease and caring for those struggling with the disease. But there is a peripheral effect. There's a domino effect of people who have other things and they can't get their prescription or get their doctor's appointment or get their regular care. And so it's squeezing everybody who has medical issues also. So the effort again is to think clearly. Hopefully these stats have helped you do that. Care deeply. And I hope, like me, I hope you're trying to avoid shutting down. I hope you're trying to avoid freaking out. Neither of those things is good. I hope you're being patient with other people who are shutting down or freaking out. You know, it's kind of understandable. But really the big question is, how do we respond? How do we respond? We can't control what's going on. We can't predict what's going on. So the big question is, how will we respond to this situation? And here's what I would share. It is Easter week. It is Good Friday week. And the president began this week by saying, there's going to be a lot of death this week, highlighting the coronavirus's ability to take life. And I want, as we approach the ending of this week, to say, there is going to be a lot of life this week. There is going to be a lot of life this week because Jesus Christ has the power to give life. The Old Testament shared a lot of prophecies, and the biggest prophecy that the Old Testament made was found in Isaiah 25, verse 7. It was an impossible promise. It says this, "And he will swallow up on this mountain the covering that is cast over all peoples, the veil that is spread over all nations. He will swallow up death forever. And the Lord God will wipe away tears from all faces, and the reproach of his people he will take away from all the earth, for the Lord has spoken." 700 BC, through Isaiah, God made a promise that he was going to swallow up death forever. The coronavirus is actually just one tool in death's toolbox, just one. And death has no shortage of tools. So the promise that was made in Isaiah was an impossible promise. How could God swallow up death forever? Well, it says in Hebrews chapter 2, verse 14, "Since therefore the children share in flesh and blood, he, Jesus himself, likewise partook of the same things, that through death he might destroy the one who has the power of death, that is the devil, and deliver all those who through fear of death were subject to lifelong slavery." Jesus came into the world to defeat death. How? By dying on the cross with the power to save. He came to abolish death, not just one cause, the whole thing. Jesus came to overthrow the grave. And it says in 1 Corinthians 15, verse 54, "Then shall come to pass the saying that is written, Death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is your victory? O death, where is your sting? The sting of death is sin, and the power of sin is the law. But thanks be to God, who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ." Hey, I have amazing news for you. There's going to be a lot of death this week, but there's going to be a lot of life this week because Jesus conquered the grave. Now listen, I don't mean that Jesus died, rose again, and then stopped death from happening. That would have been good, nobody dying from that point on, but not good enough. What Jesus did was, he didn't just stop death. He rose again in triumph, and he promises to reverse all that death has accomplished. The Christian teaching is in the bodily resurrection of the saints, which means Jesus said, there will come a time when you hear my voice and come out of your grave. That means that he's not just going to stop it, he's going to reverse it. He's going to undo all the damage death has done to this entire world. And he's not just going to reverse it physically, he is going to restore us to our original Creator's intentions. We are going to be risen in glory. And so everything that death set out to do is going to be undone and reversed, and we are going to be redeemed in glory, never to die again. That's what it means for God to swallow up death forever. Jesus said that whoever lives and believes in me will never die. That doesn't mean that physical death is something that we're going to avoid. Likely, we will have to cross that river, just like everyone else. But what it means is death does no permanent damage to the believer in Jesus Christ. When I used to work at Walmart in college, there was a guy named Gar who worked as a door greeter. All he did all day long was stand at the door and welcome people in. He even had this roll of stickers in his pocket with smiley faces, and he'd give the kids some smiley face stickers. And when he'd come in, he'd say the same thing. Hello, my friend. Hello, my friend. And every once in a while, he'd go for a break, and I got to be the door greeter. And then when people came in, I got to hand out the stickers, and I got to say, hello, my friend. And listen, all death is to the believer in Jesus Christ is the door greeter welcoming us into heaven. Hello, my friend. Christians don't die. We blink, and then our faith becomes sight. So let me just encourage you this Easter week. This is why Jesus came into the world. There's going to be a lot of death. There's going to be a lot of life. We have nothing to fear. Rest all of your fears, all of the fears for your loved ones, all of your anxiety for the world, in the fact that Jesus came into the world to save us. And that if our faith is in him, if we have trusted him as Savior and Lord, we have nothing to fear. Absolutely nothing to fear. Well, hey, let me invite you to be a part of our online Easter services and online Good Friday services. There'll be Good Friday tomorrow at 7 o'clock. We'll release the video. Easter Sunday, 9 a.m. Get up, celebrate, worship, because Jesus has overcome the grave. God bless you guys. Thanks for hopping on this call today, this webcast today.